Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to one up to chin up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 102. We're thrilled to be joined by Amanda Mullin today. Amanda is a clinical psychologist, business owner, and keynote speaker, passionate about helping people thrive, whether that's through emotional regulation, neurodivergence-friendly strategies, or achieving work-life balance. As the founder of Mindwork Psychology, Mindworks Online, and Think Differently, she brings over 2 decades of experience supporting individuals to navigate challenges like ADHD, anxiety, and burnout using science-backed techniques that actually work. Dr. Amanda is also the creator of Thrive 2025, an online program designed to help people regain their energy, joy, and clarity. Her popular program has an ADHD edition. She's known for her engaging and relatable approach, weaving in humor, practical insights, and even the occasional rubber duck to make complex psychology accessible. When she's not running her business or speaking on stage, you'll find her playing football, juggling life as a mum, or enjoying a strong cup of matcha. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, so we're keen to hear all about those different parts of your life, beginning with your own experience with neurodiversity.
Well, it's a great way to introduce myself, isn't it? Because I'm a clinical psychologist who studied neurodiversity, although back in the day, we didn't use those words. We talked about things like autism and ADHD as if they were very serious disorders that little 6-year-old boys had. And then we learned the treatment plan to cure them so that by the time they become adults, we would have got rid of those things like ADHD and autism. So I think for me, that's probably where I started. I didn't know that I had ADHD. I'm most likely an ADHDer, so I also have features of autism as well. And it wouldn't be picked because, I'm high functioning, terrible words. But that means that what's wrong with me is maybe I'm neurotic or anxious or perfectionistic or just difficult. So I think those are kind of words that I'd used a lot until I became, not just as a person, but as a psychologist familiar with neurodiversity, what it actually looked like and what that meant, moving away from that university education into what does it really look like. So it's been a really big journey for me, moving away from everything I ever learned, moving into what the science really tells us, and moving into a really modern approach to neurodiversity as well.
Sounds like a much friendlier approach than the idea of curing people, being something that you grow out of. Looking back at when you were younger, did you notice anything that might have predicted a diagnosis?
I went to university for 8 years and I'm a doctor of clinical psychology. So that makes it sound like I'm a really academic person. But actually, I was always in trouble at school, getting suspended, sticking up for people. So there was some flags if you knew to look for them. I'm a real advocate for fairness, which tends to be something you see a lot in a neurodiverse community, that people like things to be fair and they like things to work well for others. And so I'd often get in trouble because I'd be the person to stand up and make things fair. But I'd also get in trouble because I was impulsive, I was quite easily dysregulated, and I would be a little bit all over the place. And if I wasn't being like that, I was being really highly masked so that I could fit in.
I guess that's often a challenge for women as well, the masking side of it. Is that something that you came to realize later in life, the cost of masking?
Absolutely. I mean, the cost of masking is burnout, isn't it? I mean, we know this, not just for women, but also for men. Men are just as guilty of masking as women are. It's just that we might look a little bit different. But I think we mask because we want to fit in. As humans, we want to connect. We want to have those connections and those relationships. We want to fit in. And it's a really important drive that all of us share as humans. So how do you do that if you don't mask? How do you do that in a world that has these expectations for you to be conforming? I think it's a really difficult question that we haven't answered yet and we're still working on. But yeah, the cost of masking is most definitely burning out.
Have things changed for you post having that identification?
Look, I think for me, when I first had that kind of aha moment where I realized, oh, hello, perhaps I have ADHD myself. That was a big moment for me. And then, also starting to think maybe I also have autism or features and traits of that autistic style brain. Those things are really beautiful because I don't exist in a world where there's a lot of stigma. I'm quite privileged to work as a clinical psychologist in a very neuroaffirming community. So that's easy for me, isn't it? For me, that diagnosis means things like being able to use practical strategies, being able to understand myself a little bit better, being able to relate better to my clients, and get on the stage and talk about these things in a way that's really free of stigma. So I feel quite privileged around what diagnosis meant for me, because that's not what it means for everybody.
Yeah, it's great to hear that it did go so well. And I hope that as hopefully stigma reduces more broadly, that more people have that experience. Has it meant that the way that you work and with your life has changed as well, that you're able to, I guess, have less masking and less self-judgment and things like that?
Yes and no. I think for me, I'm the director of Mindwork Psychology. So we're a large group practice up in Sydney. We have 14 psychologists on team. And I try to run, and I'll say try because it's a work in progress, but I try to run a neuroaffirming practice. I'm not the only neurodiverse psychologist on our team. And we have lots of clients coming through, obviously, who are neurodivergent themselves. It's such an interesting space to be in, isn't it? Because we don't quite know what works. And I try to run this really neuroaffirming practice, but there's no book that I can open to tell me how to do that. And also, every single person who's neurodivergent has different needs. So we don't ever know what that looks like anyway. So I think it's such an interesting space for me to get to work in, to be able to try new things and adapt. But it's also still such a early stage for everybody there to be even thinking about these things and working out how we can do it well.
You'll be writing the book. That's that other people can buy it. It's great that you set that up. Could you talk more about burnout and I guess some of the challenges there with masking?
Yeah. Well, look, I'd say with a lot of the clients that I work with, some of the biggest challenges that people who are, I do hate the word high functioning, but I think sometimes it's great because that's how people identify. They're like, I'm high functioning. This is who I am. I'm good at the world. So why am I struggling? So I think what that looks like when you're masked is using things like hyperfocus to get things done. And if I give a nice example, let's say that you're a surgeon and you're neurodiverse and you're focused on your surgery and you can not eat, not go to the toilet, do that amazing operation, hold all those details in your head because it's your passion area. And you can do the most amazing, incredible brain surgery or whatever it is that you're doing, right? We all look at that and we're like, oh, that is amazing. We aspire for that. And yet when we turn it around and we think of, is that healthy? If you're doing that every day, is that healthy? What's the toll on your body? What's your downtime? Are you actually happy with that? So you might be really engaged. Your brain might be wired to let you work that way. And it might make you incredibly effective. But that's not the same as having a really happy, meaningful, fulfilled life. And sometimes when we are masked, we can look like such high performers in our chosen fields. And yet we can still be unhappy on the side because we haven't really mastered that balance in life.
That's a really good point. Someone was telling me about a stat around mortality rates for people with ADHD. They were attributing it mainly to accidents and impulsive decisions, but maybe part of the reduction of lifespan is actually related to hyperfocus and the cost that it might have on the body.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to think of those mind-body links, right? And especially when we think about the comorbidity now, or the co-occurrence, I should say, between autism and ADHD, like there's so much overlap. We're now thinking maybe 70% of people, probably both. Maybe the answer is closer up to 100%. And so when we think like that, we think how much disconnect there can be in the autistic community around, the disconnect from their body. And we think about things like that a lot less in the ADHD community because we just haven't spoken about it because we haven't understood what it means to be neurodiverse in the first place and how we're wired up in our nervous system. And I think those conversations are so important for our health, looking at that mind and body connection.
And Amanda, you mentioned Thrive 2025. We mentioned it in your bio. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work projects you might be working on at the moment?
Well, look, I would say I'm a typical ADHDer. I always have too much going on. The private practice, which is beautiful, where we get to work one-on-one with people. What happened to me is prior to COVID, when I guess online wasn't such a big thing, our wait lists were blowing out. And so I started writing online courses, which I love because they can be on demand. And I like talking, typical ADHDer. So I can get on there, talk a lot just to the camera, share the things that I'm really passionate about as well. So I love building an online course. Thrive 2025 is my online courses, but I've taken many of them and I've made it a 10-month course. So it's the longest thing I've ever done because I feel like sometimes, when we do this 6-week course or a 10-week course and we get in there and we learn things, but then we forget and we do the next shiny new thing. And I wanted to get people for a long time and do those micro skills and micro teaching and really embed that knowledge so that ideally, I'm hoping that after a year with me, they can feel like that there's no more effort there. They've got the strategies embedded. So that's what Thrive is. I'm pretty excited. It's our first year launch this year.
Oh, congratulations. Launched this year.
Yes. So all the other online programs have been running, but this big one, it's a new one for us.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess one of the things that comes to mind when I think even a 6-week course can sometimes be difficult to stick to. As someone that has ADHD yourself, how do you design the course in such a way that it still has that kind of novelty that can stimulate the brain in a way that someone that might have ADHD can experience the full benefits of the course?
What a good question. And I really like course design. So it's an interesting facet inside being able to share knowledge is how do you share it in a way that becomes accessible and that people can connect with and remember and then use, right? So there's all these different elements, which I kind of love, all the moving parts. So I tend to make them very multimedia. And I put a lot of work into trying to capture, make it really interesting. I think the longest video I've ever made is 20 minutes because most of them will be less than 5 minutes. Get in, get your information, then please leave and go think about that and make your connections stick and then come back and get some more information when you're ready. I find that has worked better than like an hour-long session or anything too big.
Yeah, so it's the idea of keeping it multimodal and also fairly short. So I think it's similar to the way a lot of YouTube videos are going these days. I think probably about 5 years ago, the 1-hour videos were kind of in because a lot of content means there's a lot of info in it. Now these days, you see a lot of the videos tend to be like that 5 to 20 minute mark. When you're designing this content, what's one thing that has stuck out to you as something that I don't want to say necessarily other people get wrong, but what was one really big insight that you took away that was just oh, okay, if I do this thing, and you did mention the multimodal and the time thing, I guess I'm pushing you for more information, more techniques, because it's something I like to note out on myself as well. So if you got any others, I'd love to hear them.
Look, I think some of it, we would just say is my personality. And that when I work one-on-one with people as well, when you think about psychology training, it's very welcome your client to the room, ask them if they found you okay, how is the journey, settle them in. I've never been able to do that because that's not what ADHD does. I'm like, hey, how is your week? Let's get going. What's your problems? Let's go. And so I'm really solution focused. And instead of finding that and trying to be what's another type of psychologist is supposed to be, that textbook psychologist, I'm myself. So I really like being able to just be authentic and say, this is who I am. If you're looking for that much more slow-paced therapy, or you're looking for someone who's going to talk really slowly and, kind of waffle, and you love that style, and there's nothing wrong with that style, but if you love it, don't come get my stuff, because I'm straight to the point, filled with tips. I just want to know what works. And I assume that everyone else comes to find me because they want to know what works too. So that's what I like to do. Just get in there, get to the point.
Nice. That's my type of psychology as well.
Well, I do try sometimes to remember to say hello. It's really important.
We heard a bit about all of your extracurricular activities in your bio. Want to tell us more about football and kids and traveling and matchas?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I like to be active. So I've always been a bit of a runner when I was a kid. Although I wasn't diagnosed, I think one of the things that made my life okay was that I discovered running. So I would get up and go for a run to the surprise of other people. And then I ran all the way through university. And that was my Ritalin. I didn't know it, but that's why I was doing it. And so I've always ran, and that's really special. So I like that. It is equivalent to Ritalin. I mean, the research tells us getting out there for a good bit of exercise can make such a difference. But also, I love things like football, soccer. I took it up when I was 40. And I actually took it up because as a woman, I like sport. But I came from Scotland, where women don't do a lot of sport over there. And also, I used to think my legs were too fat to play football. I just thought if I put on those, shorts and a pair of soccer boots and those soccer socks, that people would be staring at me going, what is she doing out there? That's a horrible look. And so it was actually a bit of a pushback for myself as a psychologist to say, wow, look at some of these beliefs I've grown up with around how women need to look and how women need to be before they can do things like play soccer or play netball or play any of the other sports that I have now tried. Your body is there to get you through life. It shouldn't be determining how you do things based on its shape or its size. I also love soccer because scoring goals and having a team and catching up with my friends, they're all the benefits. But I just think sport is so special and something that's not always accessible because of the beliefs we get when we grow up that we're not sporty, or we don't look right, or we don't fit right, or we're not good enough at it. And I'm not a great soccer player. I just like pretty average. I'm not in the Premier League. I just go out and kick a ball around and have a really good time. And some of the sports that I do, I'm not that good at all. And it's really not the point. So I do want to say that because sometimes, when people get interviewed and they talk about being good at many, many things, I just enjoy them. That's the point of things.
Such a great mess. My wife sometimes say things like that. It's a shame that it seems not necessarily super common for women my age to play football, but probably more common than for women. But it's a great way to get exercise. Also same in terms of doing a lot of running when I was from about 11. And I think it really did help in terms of helping with executive functioning and focus. When would you have started to run? Because you said you did that during university.
I remember running as a teenager. So I lived in the countryside in Scotland, and I remember getting up and it would be dark. And I think it was about probably a 2-kilometer loop around my village, around the cows and the horses and the sheep and things like that, and down the side of a river. It's so beautiful now that I don't have it and would appreciate that kind of run. At the time, I had no appreciation, but I probably did like a good 2-kilometer run most mornings. So you don't need to go for a big run to have that good executive functioning impact.
And did you do the downhill running style as well?
Downhill running. I'm a terrible downhill runner. So I just like a flat run, a nice flat run where I can do more tempo runs because they're definitely flat and I'm in charge.
Yeah.
That's my preferred route.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you optimize your working hours?
Good question. Well, I'm quite privileged now, obviously, because I've got my own business. But I think for me and for many people that I work with, I'd say the best way to optimize your work hours is to get to know yourself and to know when you're productive. I'm really productive in the morning, which isn't true for everybody, but I like to get up and do my heavy work in the morning. And I sometimes I'm really productive late at night as well. So depending on what I'm working on, if it needs a big block of time, that hyperfocus, I'm an early morning or a late nighter, middle of the day, not so much for me. So that's a good time for me to do things that are demanding, that I can tick off, reply to emails, things that don't require sustained attention. So yeah, I think that varies for everyone, though. I think knowing yourself and also accepting that it might change over your lifetime, like particularly for women with hormones, they can even change over the month. So I think it's more stable sometimes for men, but just knowing yourself and knowing what it looks like for you is so important.
Yeah, you were saying that what works for you is getting some heavy work done in the morning. I imagine by heavy, you kind of mean the stuff that's important, but you don't requires a lot of energy to get going. But I imagine some of your clients might be more like, oh, I just need to knock something off that's easy to start getting momentum. Do you see variations in that kind of approach?
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to that for a lot of people with ADHD, it's really hard to get started on a task anyway, right? So that task initiation is such a struggle sometimes. So I actually don't struggle in the mornings with task initiation. I'm so great. Like it's just such a good time for me. So that's why I try to knock off important tasks at that point. But on the rest of the day, I do have to use, different tricks and strategies to get initiated because I'm not interested and my executive functioning has gone. So that's where you need all those tricks and your toolkit, and you need to be looking at, can you structure your day, or do you have a technique that you can pull out the bag to get going?
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you're very mindful of your rhythms during the day. In the morning, it's kind of like Amanda's living her best life. She doesn't really need that many guardrails. But then as it slips more towards the afternoon, it's like, how do I trick myself into getting stuff done? Because I just feel like winding down. Does that sound about right?
Certainly. And I think, when we're talking about that example of being a surgeon, so, for me, my hyperfocus is quite extended. So if I sit down in the morning and think, oh, maybe I'll do something on an online course or something I'm really interested in that could take me, say, 12 hours, there's a real risk that I could actually be in hyperfocus for 12 hours, not eat, not drink, not stand up, not move from the desk, and just get that stuff done. And, again, it comes back to how cool is that? Not really. I'm also a cancer survivor. That's terrible for my physical health. So I sometimes have to take myself out of hyperfocus, go for a walk, do some other things, and then struggle to restart myself. So it's tricky, isn't it? I think it just speaks to that there's not one size fits everybody. And there's working with your rhythms, but sometimes there's also accepting that your rhythms are not good for you.
Yeah, I was going to ask too about with your family as well, with kids. Has that altered your rhythms as well?
School drop-offs, they're such a killer for me in the early morning. So yes, it would be great if I did not have to spend time sitting in the Sydney commute to drop my kids to school and could just hyper-focus from wake-up points. Sometimes it is a bit of a struggle if I come back, and even then I find I'll not have any music on in the car on the trip back home. Don't even have a podcast on because it will distract me from what I want to do when I get home. And I just need to keep that clarity so that otherwise it's so easy, right? ADHD brains, we love stuff. If I put a podcast on, I'll be down the rabbit hole doing something else and thinking about something else. And I'll lose what I wanted to do, unless I've got a visual up and a post-it note stuck saying, when you get home, you're doing this thing. It's so easy to get off track.
Definitely. I'm imagining you, Amanda, like in the car and starting to visualize what you're going to do. It's like, oh, wait, I'm still driving. Like I shouldn't be visualizing.
It's really tricky. I mean, look, I do love to have post-it notes around, right? And I just usually write down what I need to get done, just one or two things, and I leave it stuck on the top of the laptop. So when I come back, I know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of taking a break and then being able to resume. You mentioned, I guess, everyone's different and different things work with different people. But have you found a pattern in anything in any like mainstream productivity advice that seems to be a little bit overrated or something that doesn't quite work? I'd love to know more about that.
Oh, productivity devices. I like AI. We were talking before the show about AI and I love it. I mean, I'm a bit of a tech nerd and I love all things that can make me more productive. Would I love all these things if I didn't have ADHD? I'm not sure, because I've always known that my brain doesn't work like everybody else's. So I've always been looking to try to plug the gaps without understanding that That's just how I think. So I think for a lot of ADHDers, we're always on the lookout for this thing, this app or device or program that's going to fix our ADHD finally. You know, it's like this new to-do list or this new way of working, and we can jump on it. And I would say the one thing that I've learned is you give me anything and I'll feel like it's changed my life, you know, for 5 days. Because I love novelty and I love learning and I'm curious. And so for those 5 days, I'll think you're a magician and your thing is amazing. And then it'll just stop working. And that's a common theme that I find for everybody, because novelty is such a part of ADHD that we can make anything work for a few days. And then our brain will never notice it again. So that app, that tool stops working. So then it brings me back to the thing that is kind of boring that I train my clients on, which is discipline and routines and that boring stuff, which you can take anywhere. And it's a lot cheaper, obviously, than the next app that you're going to buy to fix up your problems, or the next to-do list that sounds like it'll remind you, because it won't. You'll spend 2 days typing all your things in your to-do list, well, you won't look at it, so it won't work for you. So it's really, again, coming back to understanding how ADHD works, right? How executive functioning works, and accepting that we're not going to change that. We're not going to change our brains. So all we need is like good support that works.
Sounds good. And we're going to take a leaf out of your book, Amanda, and we're going to go for a little bit of a run, and we'll be right back. Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
We're back. We went for a run, feeling energized. And now we're keen to hear about discipline and routine, starting with the morning. What does your morning typically look like?
There's a lot of interesting research out there, and I like things like biohacking. I will be honest. I love all that stuff. I just like looking at how can I get to know myself better, because for ADHDers, we tend not to be very self-aware and not know how to get in touch and how to work out what our strengths are and where we're challenged. So I do like to wear, I actually have one of these like little rings at the moment, and I've got no affiliations, so you can Google them, have a look. But I love it because why do I use it? Because it's on my finger, so it's visible. It's a nice little reminder that I'm paying attention to my health. And I've been wearing it for over a month. So unlike many things, I'm still paying attention to it after a month, which is quite impressive for me. And my morning routine looks like really having some movement, getting in sunlight, trying to avoid doing a caffeine kickstart straight away. And if I can get out for a run, that would be great. But even stretching, so just moving my body. And that's, I mean, I'm obviously a bit older than you guys, so I think I didn't appreciate how important movement was. But as I get older, it's become more and more important just to build movement through my day as well. You know, we stop moving as we age, and it's a slow creep. So just keeping that movement in there has been really important. So yeah, so movement, the sunlight, getting outside. You know, if you ever listen to the Huberman podcast, he talks a lot about, you know, the need to get out there and move your eyes and look into the distance and all these health benefits. I love that stuff. So that's my morning. 15 minutes of having, you know, something to drink outdoors in the sunshine, moving my eyes, trying to move around as well. And if I'm in Sydney and it's not boiling hot, maybe trying to do a bit of yoga outside.
Wonderful. It's funny when we were talking about content creation and Huberman is probably a bit of an abnormality in terms of the trend towards shorter content, 3-hour long episodes, but some great content there. Just to get one about circadian rhythms and getting sunlight in the morning too. Do you do any other biohacking techniques? Do you experiment with different types of caffeine and when you have your matcha, things like that?
Well, look, I have dropped caffeine for the matcha of late. And that's because I've had some gut issues recently. So I've been really working on the gut. And so I love the science around those links between the gut, the brain, the mind, how we feel. And I think particularly when we are neurodiverse, there can be a lot of sensory sensitivities, and your food sensitivities can play a part in that as well, right? I mean, I think if we go back years, that's why people used to say, if you had a preservative in your drink, like a highly colored drink, or if you ate sugar, it would make you look like you had ADHD. And those things don't give you ADHD, but they can make you feel a little bit hyper. And other stuff can make you feel quite sedated. So again, for me, it's about getting to know yourself, right? What works? When you put it inside your body, how does it make you feel? And people with ADHD tend not to have the best diets. They can have a bit of a loose relationship with food where they forget to eat, or they're quite impulsive. So it's hard to maintain a really healthy diet. Or I sometimes see the opposite in my clinical practice as well, where people are a little bit hyper-focused on their diet and they start restricting and getting like a little bit, I'm having a matcha phase, so that means I cannot have anything else at all. So it gets a little bit overly disciplined as well. And then sometimes thrown to the curb instead of being absorbed in and becoming part of daily life in a way that's healthy. So yeah, I think I've forgotten what the original question was, but in a typical way, but it's really around knowing yourself, isn't it? So coming back to biohacking, that was your question. That's why I like it. What works? What works today? Does it work over time? Can I stick with it? Do I need to change it up? Will it work for me in 10 years? And does it work for other people? Because obviously that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you tell us a little bit more about the other end of the day? Like, how do you sleep and how do you switch off at night?
See, I love that question because I actually sleep like the dead. So the clinical research says that if you have ADHD, you either sleep like the dead, like your lights out, or your lights on, can't get to sleep. It's really problematic. So I feel really blessed that I've always been in category 1, where I just go to bed and I'm asleep within a minute. It's pretty impressive. So my little ring stats tell me that I'm a great sleeper. But I would say that's not true. For the large majority of my clients struggle with sleep. And most people with ADHD have that correlation between sleep being difficult. That's also because ADHD, and particularly when it's undiagnosed, there can be so much anxiety as well. So for a lot of people, I find they lie awake and they're worrying. So it's not really being neurodiverse, it's keeping them awake, it's anxiety.
Well, sometimes you have a hyperfocus session in the evening. Does that disrupt your sleep, or it's never an issue even if you just spend 3 hours writing content late at night, you can immediately go to bed?
Look, my husband would say, I'm known for going to bed at 3:00 because I've gone into hyperfocus. And he will give me a good, that's not good for your health to do that. And I totally agree with him. I am the kind of person who could start something at 8:00 at night and work till 3 a.m. I could probably go longer. I could probably go right through the night if I needed to, but I choose not to. And again, it comes back to when I was younger, I used to do that a lot. And as I've got older, matured, became a psychologist and got really interested in my health, I'm like, is that healthy? Should I? Just because I can doesn't mean I should. So I try to keep a regular bedtime, but it's challenging, right? The world is out here challenging us to keep a regular bedtime now. I know a new show on Netflix that you could binge every single episode. It's kind of tricky.
What are luring distractions? Great to hear about the general approach there. Now, if people wanted to find your course or work with Mindworks, where could they find you online?
So they can find us on most platforms. Probably would struggle to find us on something like TikTok because I forget to go and post on TikTok. But we're pretty good on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we've also got websites. So you can find us at Mindwork Psychology. Me for my speaking and my online courses. I also have a website called Think Differently with Dr. Amanda. That's where I do a lot of work with schools, businesses, and individuals with Thrive and online courses too. You're welcome to connect, reach out, and love hearing from people.
Well, Amanda, it's been wonderful having you on. Do you have any final words or asks for our audience?
Well, thanks for having me. It's really been a pleasure. And I think it was really nice to come on and speak to you guys and get to meet you. My final words are this, that when you look at the three of us on the screen, we're so different. What works for each of us is probably something different. We're all having different years, different days, different lives, different relationships. And there is no solution to having something like ADHD other than getting to know yourself. Let go of the label of ADHD and really truly get to know yourself and what it means to be you. And I think that's my message for everybody is get to know yourself, become self-aware.
Wonderful. And we'll wrap the show with that.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.